All right, we're recording. Thank you for joining me the episode 1 of Welcome to the USA Personal Finance Edition. My name is Hui-chin. I'm a certified financial planner and owner of Pavlov Financial Planning. And I am also a first-generation immigrant to the US, like many of you are. I decided to record this series because I've heard this question asked over and over again in different settings. Like, oh, I'm married American, but I know nothing about how to survive, how to live in the America without my spouse. And now we're moving there for the first time. What do I need to know? And this is a sentiment that I can really relate to. Even though I chose to move to the US for work before I married my spouse, I still knew very little about personal finance and what's the best way to do things in the US before I really took an effort and educate myself. So I hope this series of videos will give you some basic understanding of how personal finance works in the US and how to take care of yourself and take care of your family and become more independent. And my goal or my wish, my plan in the next 5 episodes is to cover some really basic stuff. The 5 topics that I'm currently planning are credit, credit history, how to build credit history, what are credit reports, why is credit even important for a lot of us who came from cultures where you're just not supposed to borrow money. Second, employment, how to really structure employment if you don't get a job, how the self-employment works. Third, Social Security, or generally the system, and Medicare, how does the government security nets work, especially for people who are coming from system where there are a lot of government or social safety net. And fourth, taxes, and this exists in everywhere of the world. But in the US, you will see that taxes can be very complex. And fifth is insurance. So not just, like insurance products, but really more like, as many of you already know, like medical insurance, just like the basics. How do you cover the risks that you may not even think about when you're living in another country? And based on the feedback from all of you, I will probably get into the second half of the series into more advanced topics like retirement planning or savings or investments. But before I get to those interesting topics, I just want to cover 2 things in this introductory episodes. First of all is really, I think everyone should know, even though you have married American, is that you have a choice of whether to become American yourself. And I know a lot of people just thought automatically, well, I married American and now I have the ability to get my green card and become a US citizen. Why not? And really, depending on where you came from, that might be a really attractive option. And for some people, that might not be an attractive option. And there are pros and cons really in all of those situations. So depending on your country of origin and what you plan for your life together with your spouse, it is really not necessary for you even to get a green card if you're never coming to the US. You can stay overseas. You can still have really good financial planning with your spouse being American and you being a citizen of another country. So explore all the options you can. Don't feel like you're forced into anything, because you're not. And the other thing, while we're talking about forcing, is that you cannot force your spouse to do anything either. I mean, we're all adults, individuals, and sometimes you might feel like, well, you're in the family, you might be taking care of more of the domestics, such as taking care of children or taking care of the households, but you don't really get the chance to learn a lot of the financial stuff, and maybe your spouse is the person who takes care of all of that. And you might have the fear of actually starting that discussion, or you have started that discussion in the past with your spouse, wanting to learn more about how financial things work, especially as American or in the US, but you just were never able to have that discussion and learn more about that. And I hope this series of videos help you in that way to become more independent outside of what your spouse is currently doing. Of course, I advocate and I really hope every couple have that discussion and have a really good division of labor, and also know what everyone is supposed to do, and also be able to survive on their own if one of the spouse passes away prematurely. But if your spouse is not at that place yet, I hope that this series can help you become more educated and become more knowledgeable, so you can be at a better footing to start that discussion again with your spouse. All right. So before I go into those 5 topics that I already told you about, in this introductory episode, the last thing I want to cover is just generally how the system works in the US, because we all come from different countries. Some countries might be, you can own things as family. Some countries you can only own things as an individual. Some places you have more spousal protection. Some places you don't. So I just want to give you a brief overview of how things work in the US system. So here I'm going to share with one very simple graphic. Bear with me. All right. All right. As I say, very single graphic. So depending on where you came from, you might know things as being able to jointly own assets or income stream as a family, or can only do things as an individual. In the US, you can do both, but they're very specific division. So in terms of normal accounts, like bank checking account, savings account, in terms of real estate, you can jointly title all of those things together with your American spouse. In some cases, you are able to do it without being a U.S. citizen or a green card holder. There might be some sort of technicality or practical things that the bank do not want to deal with foreigners, for example, that prevent you from doing that. But in general, there is basic security for you as a family, as somebody who is coming into this system new, that your spouse is able to allow you to be part of the family financial system by title a lot of your assets together. And since you're married, they're not too much, what's the right word for this? There's no law against that for joining title things together. And however, there are things in the U.S. as well where it's just individual. We're not just talking about assets, but for example, credit history, like whether you are worthy of the bank lending you money. It's based on your personal history. And also when we talk about retirement accounts, like individual retirement accounts, like IRAs, if you heard it initials before. Those are, as the name suggests, individual. So you are not able to say, oh, can I just put my name on my spouse's IRA? Like that doesn't work because they're designed for individual security. And there are also some things that you have heard about, like health savings account, or like flexible savings account that's related to your spouse's employment, possibly as employee of a U.S. company or U.S. government. And all of those are individuals. So there are very clear divisions on what can be joined with your spouse and what you have to have individual controls. So you might think that, okay, if my spouse individually own everything and he refuses, or just we don't have any assets that can be jointly titled, what are my options? Am I protected anywhere? So there is a basic level of spousal protection coming from an era, decades ago, where this it is the norm that one spouse earns income, the other spouse stays at home. So there are basic spousal protection. For example, if there is no designation on who inherits account when one spouse dies, the other spouse usually directly inherits the accounts. Or like Social Security, like if you your spouse passed away, or if your spouse if you and your spouse divorce, but you have at least 10 years of marriage, you can still use your spouse's work history to get a basic level of Social Security payments. And that's also available if it's before retirement age, and when your kids are still minor, your kids are entitled to some benefits. If there's disability in the family, like from the income earning spouse, or if the income earning spouse passes away. So there is some basic protection, but it's not as much as some countries have. So I hope this is a good enough overview of what we're dealing with here. And in the future, we'll probably refer back to this kind of system more on the individual side of individual topics like credit and insurance and things like that. So you know what your rights are and what you need to focus on, particularly in your relationship. So welcome to the USA. And this is the introductory episode of the Personal Finance Edition. So here you can see a link from my blog called Money Matters for Globetrotters. And this link is where you can find all the videos, and there will also be a place where you can provide your email to download notes, where I'm planning to have a list of check boxes that you might want to go through that to make sure that you're covering the most basics of your finances in the US. So I hope this is a good introduction, and I look forward to go through all the individual topics with you soon. All right, take care. Bye.